Hello, everyone, and welcome to Virtual JaneCon 2021. This panel is on Lost in Austen and the mid-2000s Austen adaptations as gateways to the world of Austen for new audiences. My name is Amanda-Rae Prescott, and I'm the moderator, and I'm a freelance journalist specializing in reviewing period dramas and UK television. My works are all over the internet, but you can find me on Twitter mostly, talking about period drama all the time. And I'm here with a couple of my friends to discuss Lost in Austen and the other mid-2000s Austen adaptations. And we're going to start the introductions clockwise. Also, my pronouns are she, her.
Hi, everybody. I'm Latisha. I am a screenwriter and podcaster. My podcast is called Introspectional, where we talk about these types of fun things. And my background is just in watching movies and thinking about them. And so this is really, really fun. I'm super excited to be here.
Ayana, you're next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ayana of the Vintage Guidebook, my blog on WordPress, and I am a social and fashion history enthusiast, which means I watch a lot of period dramas. I love reading Jane Austen and other classic literature, which means I have pretty much watched every version of most popular retellings. So this is something that I just enjoy doing, and yeah, I love talking about on social media and any other place I can get to. So excited to be here too.
Last but not least.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Black Girl Loves Jane. I have a master's degree in English, but I love Jane Austen and I love classic novels. I started as a Thomas Harding lover, still am, but I do love Jane. And I have a Facebook page called Black Girl Loves Jane, where I promote the idea of diversity in Austen and in Regency and just in classic literature in general. And hopefully one day I'll write a novel and bring more people of color and people of diverse backgrounds to Jane Austen. So I'm glad to be here because I love adaptations as well.
Out of the way. I want to know when you first encountered, first encountered Lost in Austen. Did you watch it when it came out in the mid-2000s, or did you discover it later on streaming? And anybody can chime in, and as long as we all answer.
I discovered Lost in Austen on browsing DVDs. So I didn't know about the movie. I knew about the book first. There's a book called Lost in Austen too. It's like a find your own way through a narrative, and you choose which way you go throughout. That's the book. So I thought that's what the novel was or the show was going to be about. So I looked at the DVD and I was like, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. And I just enjoyed it, but I didn't see when it originally came out, but I'm glad I did. I do love it. I've seen it probably 10 times.
So Lost in Austen for me was like this, it fell into this phase that I had in college that has since extended. But Becoming Jane came out around the same time. So did the Moliere movie. That was, in the middle of the Doctor Who resurgence, post Christopher Eccleston. So I was watching Torchwood. I was just inundated with British drama at that time. Mm-hmm. And so that's around the time that I found Lost in Austen. And it was, as someone who reads and writes a fair amount of fan fiction, it was really interesting to be like, oh my God, they turned a self-insert fic into a film. That is amazing.
Yeah, that was cool.
So that's kind of how it came to me. So I definitely saw it kind of like within the time that it was a broadcast.
I did not. I saw it. I didn't even know it was a book or a movie or anything. I just remember I was on YouTube really late one night in sort of the mid 2010s, so extra late. And I was just looking up different versions of Jane Austen adaptations, because as you do, and I found it just, you know, during the recommended videos. So I was watching one and then it popped up and I decided to watch it, and I was like, this sounds like a fan fiction, because that's the other thing I'll look up multiple times. But so I was hooked. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning and find the other segment of this video. So extra late, but no less enthusiastic.
Also how I found North and South, just like random scrolling, being like,
Yeah.
oh, this is interesting.
Yes.
I had to confess, this is Lost in Austen. I heard about it for a while, but put it off. Because you know, at times I get a lot of recommendations and I'm like, I don't have time to watch this right now.
Right.
I did not watch it when it aired. So, you know, last year, quarantine, I was actually going through watching shows by the same production company. And then I came across Lost in Austen. And I was like, oh, self-insert fan fiction. This is great. I love this. And then, of course, as you do, you watch things late, you realize, oh my goodness, my fave actors from other things are in this, as you do with British television. It's like, oh, I forgot Alex Kingston's in this, and he's on Bill too. And I was like, oh, this is so cute.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to talk about with y'all about this in particular, besides the wonderful cast, is the idea of owning a text and seeing yourself in the text, because that's what the protagonist does. She hops in on this and she just decides to like accidentally join the world of Austen. And I was wondering if any of y'all have ever had that in your mind of walking around with Mr. Darcy or whoever else, which other Austen adaptation you could choose from. Have you ever had that thought? And describe it.
I always wanted to be a fly on the wall. I don't know if I actually wanted to be in the story. There's definitely moments I felt where I want to, you know, maybe shout at a character like, you're doing the wrong thing, or you know, comfort them when they're sad. I think that's what I loved about Lost in Austen, the idea of quite literally inserting yourself into a story. For me personally, it was just too much. I was like, this is too close. And in fact, she gets into so many sort of wacky situations because she's so close. And I always thought, no, I want to be there. I don't want to be right there. So I thought it was such an interesting concept. I mean, that's why I was up at like 2-3 in the morning watching, like, how is this gonna go?
Right.
So
I have never thought about being in one of the Jane Austen series of novels. I'm like Ayana, I like to think I would be a fly on the wall because I don't necessarily want to change anything, right? So the act that Amanda Price, I think that's her name, gets in there and then just her presence changes everything. I think that would be a great responsibility. I mean, because she even was like, I am ruining the great love story of all time because I am here, you know, and everything goes awry. And so I never wanted to be in there, but I would like to like be the purveyor because I do think about, okay, they don't have toothpaste like we do. How would I handle that? I wouldn't handle that at all. Or bathrooms would not handle it. So I never thought, oh, I could really, really live in this type. I'm like, no. Too much removed from the modernized world I live in. I could do without phones and stuff like that, but you know, those things like bathrooms and toilet tissue and things like that, that Amanda realizes when she gets into the realness of this world. She's like, oh, wait a minute. It's not as great and wonderful as I thought it was, you know? And so yeah, I just want to be a purveyor. So then I can come out and go in and, you know, maybe try some of the food and then leave and call it a day.
Well, you know what I find interesting is that in the story of Lost in Austen, the caveat of her, you know, kind of getting sucked into this Jane Austen novel, is a very, in my opinion, kind of sci-fi concept, right? And whenever, whether you're watching like, Doctor Who or anything that is science fiction, and they go back in time, they're always like, don't change too much shit because you'll fuck everything up, and that's the and that's kind of the understanding, right? And so it's interesting to me that she goes into this world without that mindset, without the, I really have to kind of like she's not stepping lightly, which is just very different from your typical sucked in or time travel type story, which I think is interesting. Me personally, I also have a background in theater and Shakespeare, and so I'm relatively hyperlexic. So I like words, and I like the poetry of sound and all that. So when I think about me kind of picturing myself in that era, I'm not necessarily picturing myself living with those people, but I do picture myself having those conversations and like feeling like let's talk multisyllabic words because that's how I roll. So that's kind of my entry point. So it's like, do I want to live in Pemberley? No. Would I dig a one-on-one with Darcy? Fuck yeah.
I always saw myself like in one of those ball scenes, like in a cute costume or something, but like I don't want to interact with people that much or change the storyline, because the thing is, if I end up meeting the romantic hero, then that means, Catherine Morland or whoever doesn't get their happy ending, which kind of sucks. So I'm sort of like, I'll insert myself like as a side character, like a random villager, or
I've been like, yo D, have you talked to your sister lately?
Yeah.
Put it on the side
and then leave.
Yeah, that's sort of the way I've seen it. And now as for the other mid 2000s series, they were all packaged as part of Masterpiece on PBS's rebrand in US in 2008 and 9. Austen was not featured in there, but they aired Sense and Sensibility 2008, Emma 2009, Persuasion 2007, Mansfield Park 2007, and Northanger Abbey 2007, all in one season.
Yeah.
With the season obviously air that miniseries, so they kind of threw it all in one. And it was a great introduction for folks at that time, because it was about a decade out from some of the more or less, depending on what you're talking about, with some of the movie adaptations that came out. Now, did anybody watch those adaptations as they came out on Masterpiece in 2000? You did? Okay.
I did. I saw, that's how I was introduced to Sense and Sensibility, the one that you were just mentioning, the Sense and Sensibility, all of them actually. All of them I saw live, and then I was kind of comparing them to, of course, to the novels, but also I was comparing them to the other versions that I had seen of Emma, like I had seen with Gwyneth Paltrow. So then I looked at that Emma that was on PBS, and so I saw the whole series. Some I liked, some I didn't, but for those people who've never seen it and have it all like laid out before, here is Jane Austen for you to look at and find relatable to you, and here it is in a package for you. I thought it was a great idea.
See here, that was sort of when I really started really paying attention to Masterpiece, because those were some of those versions I never saw before.
Right.
So I was like, this is perfect. It's all in one spot. I don't have to like go chasing for it, because also too, people don't realize even in late as 2009 or so, streaming wasn't what it was.
No.
DVDs were expensive. And I remember saving up my little, stuff in college for things, but it was tricky. And some of those were not previously, some of them at that point weren't even aired in the United States or like published on DVD. So I was like, this is great. It was all in one. Now, Latisha, did you watch it at that time, or you discovered those later on? I'm wondering how you did it.
Yeah, so I discovered that later on, because as you said, streaming was not what it was in the early 2000s. So like Folks who only got a Netflix account once they went solely digital don't remember actually having to wait to get DVDs in the mail, you know, and sending them back. And like, it was a process. And trust me, DVDs by mail was a godsend.
It was wonderful.
It was amazing. No one knew what to do with themselves. That's how I, you know, spent an entire weekend binging on House, but you know, we all did weird things in college. Anyway, but yeah, I discovered that later on, and upon discovering it, it was really interesting. Again, I was in my Doctor Who phase, so after somewhat leaving that and then seeing this, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Okay. And kind of the inverse of what you're talking about, of like seeing your favorite actors. It was like, I've seen my favorite actors in other things, other media, and then coming back and be like, oh, I didn't realize you could do that. I didn't realize you could do that too. Wow, this is cool. So
now I want to run through quickly first impressions. Let's start with Sense and Sensibility 2007. For me, I was really impressed with the cinematography, and that's what stuck with me, because I think at that point when I watched it on PBS, I haven't seen many things filmed in the south of England and Devonshire, so I was like, ooh. And then of course, it wasn't until rewatching it I realized, oh, that's why I'm a Poldark fan. Things make sense now. Yeah, because similar scenery. I was like, oh, my fandom makes more sense. Anyone else has first impressions for Sensibility 2007?
I liked it because it was a different version than Emma Thompson's. So Emma Thompson's is very comedic in a sense. And I love it. Don't get me wrong. You know, when I'm depressed, I look at Sense and Sensibility. When I'm happy, I look at Sense and Sensibility, Emma Thompson. But I like the fact that it was a little dark and a little serious. That some of the issues that are talked about in the novel are treated with a little more sensitivity, a little more seriousness. And I like that. I hadn't seen that version before. It was like, okay, yeah, there are some tough topics that are talked about in Austen that we kind of sometimes glance over because she's seen as being comedic or a romance, you know, it's a romance novel and it's comedic. But really, there's some serious issues that are being discussed here. And I like the fact that they made it a serious story, still a romance and love and all that, but a serious story that needed to be discussed and is talked about. If you are a fan, you're in fandom, you can talk about. So that's why I like it.
Impressions were that it was literally darker than the Emma Thompson version, which I think definitely had an overall effect on just how you view the circumstances, how you view what's going on. I think, especially if you're talking about heavier subject matter, if you're doing it in a bright, airy, you know, a meadow, it definitely has a different feel. It's not necessarily worse or better, but it definitely is different. So that was my first impression seeing that, because I'd seen the Emma Thompson version, I want to say 1996. First.
Something like that.
Somewhere in there.
Around there, yes.
And then saw this one. Right off the bat, I'll say I didn't like it as much, but for other reasons that I'm sure we will get into a little bit later. But I do like that they tried to go with a different approach and to be sort of its own entity, because I think that's really hard when you have a remake, not to just be the same version of an earlier one. So I do like that they tried to go in a different direction right off the bat and showed that visually. I thought that was really cool.
Agree. And also I feel like with the kind of darker scheme, physically darker scheme, interestingly enough, the miniseries itself was much more grounded.
Yes.
You know, and then you also got to see Eleanor. In the casting of her, it to me, and maybe this is just based on my impressions from, you know, when I saw Thompson's Sense and Sensibility as a child, just Eleanor, she felt like an adult already, you know, so her being the more like sensible one, I'm like, oh yeah, she looks like she's mature, so you know, mature decisions, that's what you do. Whereas I felt like the casting of this Eleanor, where she, you know, to me appears younger, I'm like, oh, she's taking on more responsibility than she should.
Yeah.
And that also changes the tenor of it, you know, and it's less of, oh, this is just reasonable and, you know, it makes sense, and more, oh, wow, she's taking so much. So like the decisions that she makes and how she feels about certain things, I think it comes more to the fore than it does otherwise, because you can see more of the toll it takes instead of it kind of, because I feel like in the arc of typically when you're looking at, you know, sensibility property, it's like, yeah, she's feeling kind of bad, but you know, I guess she's okay because she's always okay. And then you're like, boom, oh wow, this really sucked. Whereas I feel like in the miniseries, especially the miniseries gives the story time to breathe.
Right. Yes.
You can see it sucking in real time. You know.
True. Very true. Very true.
Very true. All right, let's move on to the next one. Emma 2009, First Impressions.
Version. Matter of fact, it keeps me from looking at the Gwyneth Paltrow version. And then I compare the newest version of Emma, and I'm like, no, I don't like that one either. I like this one. I like this version of the, because again, I think what it does is it, one thing like Latisha was saying, it gives it time to breathe. So I have more understanding of Emma. I don't think she is as bitchy as some people want her to be. I think because we get the whole dynamic of her dad and him being a hypochondriac and sick and all this, and that she's never gone anywhere, though she wants to go somewhere, but she can't because she's got this parent, which I can relate to very much. I just think it gave it more time to breathe. And so when I look at this version, I'm just so happy, and I love music, and I love everything about it compared to the other ones that I've seen before. So my first impression was like, yay, finally an Emma that I really, really, really enjoy and really understand her now. I understand her better than I did.
I think there's a playfulness to that Emma that I really, really like. You know, when the relationship, the chemistry between her and, you know, her Mr. Knightley is adorable. Like,
very.
Like almost to the point, and I know this sounds weird, almost to the point where I almost don't want them to get together just because I want them to keep on battling forever. You know, and the idea of, not that this doesn't happen in other Jane Austen novels, but I love the way that Emma, and particularly the way Johnny Lee Miller does this, the way he challenges her. You know, and I like it in a way that it is not challenging to belittle, it's not challenging to insult. It's like, I'm challenging you because I know you're smart enough to understand what's going on. Like there's very much a feel of like, you are my equal, and so this is why we're having this conversation. Which is not necessarily something that happens in, I feel like, most other novels, really. You know, there's a, you know, she has to come up, or he has to realize that he's like a bastard or whatever. And this one is like, nah, we were on the same playing field from the get. Which, you know, which is something I appreciate, which you see again throughout the entire series. So yeah, I really enjoy this one. And yeah, it does stop me from looking at the new one, which is rude, but also I can't get over that high collar in the new one. I'm like, why are you hiding your entire mouth? I can't. That's really funny.
My soul just died a little bit.
Well, I like the costumes. I did love the costumes, and I love the set on there. I love that part. I just didn't like her. I didn't like her as Emma.
I really liked this version. I thought that, it slowed it down in the way that, you know, a miniseries often does, but also like not just in terms of time. I thought they spent a lot more time going into the relationships between Emma's relationship to all the other characters, a lot more than any adaptation I've seen thus far, in the way that the book does. But we finally get to see on screen. I feel like either through just sheer direction or just the amount of time that they had. A lot of times that gets so sped up for sake of the plot or for sake of the romance between Emma and Knightley. And I feel like this one really stopped and went through, especially Emma's relationship with her father. I think that's so important to who she is and how she is the way she is. And I feel like this version actually slowed down and gave us time to look at them, and it all makes perfect sense when you watch that as to the decisions that Emma makes, and why pretty much no one but Knightley, Mr. Knightley, will ever say anything to her. It makes perfect sense when you see how she is with her father.
Right.
And
that was definitely my first impression as well, because I tried to read the book short, like a couple of years before that. It didn't really make sense to me. Then PBS aired Emma, and I was like, wow, it makes a lot more sense. Like, because some of the movie versions before, at that point, we didn't have that 2020 Emma. So I was like, yeah, it felt very fast paced to me. I was like, there's stuff missing here. That's why I think the miniseries versions tend to stick around, is because they can develop relationships. They have 3 or 4 hours to spread things out, and they're not rushing to hit beats in terms of romance or plot. And that's what I love about it. When it really hit me, I love Emma 2009 was actually a couple of years later when I started watching Elementary and The Hour, because Romola Garlai and Johnny Lee Miller were in both of those, and I was obsessed with both of those shows at the time. I'm still obsessed with The Hour. Elementary, not so much. But like rewatching Emma 2009 at that point, I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Like it just really hit home. Like rediscovering a couple of years later, that's always the fun part of like these miniseries versions. You go back and you're like, oh, that's that guy or the girl from this thing. So that was my impression as well.
And I want to just go back really quick. And I know you already just said her name, but the actress who played Emma?
Romola Garlai.
Yeah, Romola. First of all, one thing that I think is actually really, really, really critical in her portrayal of Emma, the camera just seemed to capture all of the things she said in silence.
Yes.
Because she, like, her face did a lot of work.
It did a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's something that's really worth appreciating. And again, you know, because one thing we seem to be talking about is kind of like, how do you understand Emma? How do you understand where she comes from? And the way that she was acting and reacting to her situations, you know, as Emma, you're like, oh, wow, okay, this is hitting her, and that might not have come across in this version, or oh, oh, she's thinking about it. Oh, you know, so there's so much that happened in her silence, which is funny since we don't think about Emma being quiet, but there's so much that happened in her silence that I think also allowed us as viewers to appreciate the character a lot more than like, oh, this like petty little rich girl has nothing but to do with her time. It's like, there's actually quite a lot of things going on there.
Right, she's doing a lot.
Yeah.
She's doing a lot. She has the responsibility of the mistress of the house without being the mistress, right? She's ruling the house. She's doing the housekeeping of the house or whatever, taking care of this father of hers who she loves dearly, but it's also somewhat her prison because she can't get away. Her sister got away, but she can't, so she has to stay. And so you do see it, like you said, all over her face. And then you don't think of her so much as being bitchy, you know, which I think the movie versions tried to, you know, placate because, you know, they know that Jane Austen said, oh, I wrote a character that I can love or only that I can like. And so they play to that when really, I don't think because of the version, the 2009 version, I don't think Emma is as bitchy as they want her to be. I think she's just reacting, like everyone said, to what she's dealing with at the time. And it's not that she's bitchy or selfish or mean. She's just reacting to what's going on at that time. And as her status, as the mistress, as everything else, that is what she feels the role she has to play. But really in the reflection that we see in her face when we don't hear her talking or trying to be impressive or trying to be in charge, is really, you know, there's still this young girl who's like, I have a lot of responsibility and it's all on me. And part of that is the responsibility of being quote unquote the mistress of, the county that everybody looks up to, and everybody thinks, oh, she has, she knows what she's doing, when really she may not know so much. And then when her governor goes away, which I can't think on top of my name, what her name was, but when she goes away, then she really feels the brunt of it. And that's why, I think she brings Harriet along, because now she has her sidekick again to sort of kind of help her bear that loneliness that really she's probably carrying, because, her sister's gone and her mom's dead. So I think that version really allows us to see all of that, where the movie versions are really about hitting the romance, which is great, but it's not all that needs to be discussed. And that's why I think the miniseries is so much better.
Definitely is. That's how I felt too about some of the movies. Although I do love 2020 Emma, because I love the costumes.
I do love the costumes.
I'm also a huge Johnny Flynn fan from, Vanity Fair, the adaptation everybody forgot in 2018.
I like that one.
Yeah, but that's a whole other panel. I agree with y'all on this. Next one, Persuasion 2008. Although I know some of y'all have not seen it, so who has seen it can chime in.
I saw it. It was so unmemorable to me that I don't know how much more I can say about it, except that I didn't like it.
Okay. I did not
want to go back to the old version.
I did not see it. However, upon seeing the trailer, God, it looks so sad. It's based on, the freaking trailer, but it was like, oh, I am sad. I am lost. I am sad and lost. I am sadder and I am loster. Will I ever be found? The end.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I saw it like when he was aired it, and then I forgot about it. I kind of forgot about it, and then I rewatched it for this panel, of course, because of course this is my idea to be like, let me talk about these things, and then I was like, I got hit with feels about my personal life that I was not looking for, that I did not appreciate.
Okay.
And it's funny,
did Jane Austen come out and attack you?
Yes, she came out and attacked me. And mind you, I read the book. I wasn't feeling that way. I was feeling, it's more like a historical novel. No, seeing that version just was not fun in terms of my feels. It was well acted. I forgot Tobias Menzies was in it, because for a while I was like, wait, you were in this? Oh, because when you watch, as an Outlander fan, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't remember him from anything. When I saw Outlander, I'm like, oh, I feel stupid. So yeah, I was like, thanks, Persuasion. I didn't want those feels. So yeah, we're just gonna.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. We need to dig into this. So what were the feels, and why did you feel?
Okay, so I'm put myself on the spot for a second. It's sort of like Anne's journey of like losing love, and then finding a second chance, and then realizing that has not happened for you at all. And you're just like,
okay.
I don't appreciate this, Jane. I really don't. You didn't need to remind me that I'm forever alone. Okay, thanks. I did not need that.
But you know what? I think there's also something to be said for what age you are when certain books hit you or certain stories hit you. Because
definitely,
I think it changes, and I think that also changes as far as like Jane Austen's life. When did when you find out what age was she when she wrote X, and then what age was she when she wrote Y, and then what age was I when I read X versus when I read Y, and it changes, and it's really interesting. I feel how that fits, and honestly, specifically into a woman's life. And while we are not necessarily like, I have, come out into the marriage market, blah, blah, blah. We're not, we're not, well, we are not, in 2021, actually doing that.
Right.
There is something to be said for this, like, marriageable-ish age, and when we feel relationships are supposed to happen, and then where your emotions are, are you in that everything is super important? Am I a Marianne right now, or am I in Eleanor? How did that
Right.
change how I read things? You
Right.
know,
Right.
it's just interesting.
Right. Like looking at Persuasion now that I'm older. So like the Persuasion that I saw, the original, well, not the original, the 95, I think it's 95 or 97.
Something like that.
With Sarah Hines. I was in my 20s, right? And so it was just like, oh yeah, great, wonderful. So, but looking at it now back, and now I'm in my 40s, I'm like, okay, now I understand. I now understand her now. Now I understand the feels that I didn't get the feels from the BBC version. I didn't get the feels for that, but I got to understand the character better based on the age that I am now. And so I feel your pain that when you saw the movie, you're like, I do get it. I just didn't get it from that version. I don't know. I just didn't necessarily like any of the casting. I hate to say. I just didn't like the casting. I didn't think she was the Anne in my head or the Anne of the other version. I think Anne is more sturdy in that, though she was sad. I think she was more sturdy, and like Latisha said, in I didn't see the trailer, I saw the movie. She just seemed sad all the time. Like you could have just blown, just could have said a word and she would have just started crying. It's like, no, Anne is supposed to be the stable one. Even despite all the sadness and disappointment, she's supposed to be the stable one. And in the movie, she seems like she's on the verge of tears and crying, and like her world is messed up. And it was, but I don't feel she's the Anne that would have revealed that depression as much in openness. It was an internal sadness.
Yeah.
And not so expressive outside.
And as a note here, this is the good thing about discussing things with folks, because sometimes an adaptation doesn't work. Just because it doesn't work for you, it may work for somebody else.
Somebody else.
That's kind of, this is because a lot of times that gets lost in the adaptation wars, that, it's terrible for everybody. No, it's terrible for you, but it's somebody else will enjoy it, because some of those decisions in terms of cinematography or acting and writing, it may work for some folks in terms of what they vision, and it doesn't work for others, so it's okay.
And it's okay, right?
And we want to discuss is Mansfield Park 2008. First impressions?
Okay. Mansfield Park, I feel like out of all of them, always starts with a disadvantage because people already have issues with Fanny Price, and then you have to like traverse that mountain in that adaptation. Now, if you've never been in, Jane Austen fandom and you're coming at it cold, great. You can come at this cold and just be like, oh, I get to meet this new character and be introduced to her and her circumstances, and wow, they are intense, and okay, this is going through a lot. But if you come in with some preconceived notions, like I said, I feel like it's a bit of an uphill battle. But I mean, I liked it. It's just interesting navigating her difficulties, I feel.
I think that's fair. I think so. I don't like any versions of Mansfield Park. I haven't seen one that I like yet. And I don't know if it's because of the character herself, of Fanny Price, or some of the other characters. I mean, the family's a little weird just in general. The Bertrams need help. So so I don't know if it's because of that or in and of itself, or if it's just I haven't seen a version directed or produced where I could find Fanny engaging enough, or the Bertrams understanding that family dynamic in a relatable way. I don't know yet. So I think
I haven't found a version of it that I really like. I went through it for this panel and I was still like, nope.
Nope. I got that for you. Nope.
Again, wonderful cast. Not anything technical, but just I think, I don't think there's a version just yet, at least for me, that really brings that story to life. I haven't seen one that I connected with, either good or bad. I'm fine with watching an adaptation with characters I love to hate. I'm okay with that too.
Right.
But it was neither. Yeah.
Which is worse, I think. Indifference is worse.
Yeah, being mad, like, it's just.
Yeah, for me, this is the only version of Mansfield I've seen, period. So when I saw it when PBS aired it, I didn't really get some of the subtleties of the politics and stuff at that point. I was just like, oh my gosh, Billy Piper is thrown into the Regency. This is so cool. And then now I rewatched it for the panel. I'm like, where is the record scratch when she says the word slavery? I need it. I need that. I need that record scratch, because all the politics and stuff in I think some of the issues people have with it in fandom is because that version more explicitly mentions the wealth factor than others, because others are kind of glossed by that part of the book. I haven't read the book either for Mansfield, by the way. So it was, for me now watching that, I was like, wow, this is where other adaptations should go. But we haven't, I don't believe there's a Mansfield Park adaptation that has filmed since. So,
Well, now the friends, I don't know what year it is, but it's I think it's Frances O'Connor plays Fanny Price. Yeah. They don't really mention it, but then at the end, which, I mean, the way it's directed at the end, I mean, he's in the Caribbean, he's doing that. But then at the end, like, she comes across these drawings of slaves, some doing some sexualized things. And so she's horrified by it. And then she goes to try to get some comfort. And then that's when she catches Mariah, I think, in her affair. But that's pretty much all it does. And it's like, okay, I saw this, and what is this horrifying thing? But they never address it in detail either, even in that version of Mansfield Park. They just show it, and then it's like, okay, it's atrocity, and then okay, let's get them together at the end here, and that's it. So
yeah. What's interesting? It just makes me think of, like, the ability or inability to deal with, like, pain, difficulty, and like, as I've said on Facebook and the other social medias, sometimes I'm like, if you can't talk to your daughter about menstruation, I don't want to hear about your opinions about sexism. Thanks. Like, I want, like, I like this thing of not being able to talk about the difficult stuff and how that extends into the media that you create, or, whatever is built, that, like, if you do not personally have the mechanisms to have that conversation, your characters will not have the mechanisms to have that conversation.
Right.
Or even if they do in the book, you may not feel the ability to do that in a conversation or in direction, which is actually a critical part of the conversation, possibly a critical part of their character development. But whatever systems you've built are incapable of handling that. And it's just interesting. It's like, oh, this is important. We want to show it, but we can't. Because I don't romance.
I mean, literally, that's how it is. It's like, show these drawings, and then she's upset by it, and then it's like, okay, let's figure out what we're going to do with Mariah and this affair, and then, okay, let's get to the end. And then it's like a very weird ending at the end where they're kind of talking to the camera, so they're breaking the wall or whatever. They're not talking to the camera, but they're looking at the camera, so they're breaking the wall. And it's just like, what is that? And that's why I was like, I had not seen yet a Mansfield Park that I've like, or a Mansfield Park that we were saying that has really dealt with the issue that Mansfield Park in part is dealing with. I don't think they want to deal with it. So.
And then there's interesting, like, is the problem in that moment that she is upset, which is different than the problem being that this situation exists.
See, we never get that answer. She's upset because I think part of it is the upset that the pictures that she's seen they are of slavery, they're of women and men, but then they're also a little sexualized. And so I think that part also is scaring her, maybe more than the slavery part. Because I mean, let's face it, this is the time where they knew they had slaves down. So it's not something like, oh, I never heard that you guys had slaves. So she knew they had slaves. But I think seeing it and then seeing the sexualization of some of the women in the sketches was upsetting to her, maybe as a female. And so that is what, and so she's going to look for comfort, and then that's it. But then they never deal with it. So she never says later on, what the heck was this stuff? What's going on? She never does that.
That's my issue.
And they never address it to her. And then they kind of just like tie it up like, okay, he's going to get out of the plantation business, and there we go. And that's it, you know?
It's interesting how this version handled the artwork thing, because you see it very subtly. They wasn't as sexualized as some of the other, as the Francis McDormand version.
Okay.
So like the father, I forgot his name, he's carrying a cane that's clearly like a Sambo figure.
Okay.
You have to like watch to catch that. And then there's probably a painting or two, but it's just like one of those generic like Life in the Caribbean paintings. It wasn't as bad as some of the other versions of used, but I'm like, there's a lot of imagery here that you're not really unpacking. You're going to show it to us, but you're not going to unpack that. I actually wonder about the conversation about diversity in future. Will a future adaptation decide to take that on more blatantly, or are they just going to be like, this is the one we're not going to adapt again? This is going to pretend it's not here. We're going to ignore Fanny. That's it. I don't know. Who knows? But last but not least, in terms of our discussion, first impressions on Northanger Abbey 2007.
Casting, I absolutely loved it. It had some of my favorite people. I'm actually still in the process of trying to read the novel, so that was kind of a weird mashup happening. And by in the process, I mean I got to page 4. So, I was like, I can watch the movie. No, I'm gonna read it. But yeah, I thought casting was perfect, because I think in an adaptation, you have to be really careful about, even if you have the best script ever, delivery makes such a difference. And for me, my bachelor's is in creative writing. So I've written one activity that I actually remember and that really stood out to me was that we had to write the same scene in multiple ways. That was the assignment. And it makes such a difference, because what happened was, we all did that. And then at the end, my professor was like, so that's what's going to happen if you make it into a play or a film. You're going to have the same lines done so many different ways, depending on who your actor is, depending on who your director is, and all of that. So I thought, first of all, Carey Mulligan, I think that's her last name. I like her in anything. I know she's not the main, but I love her. She's fantastic. She sort of has this, I think, very brooding quality that she brings to almost any role, even in the most upbeat. And Felicity, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm the worst with names.
Felicity Jones.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Who was probably most recently in the Star Wars franchise. Yes. I don't watch Star Wars, but I know that's probably the biggest, most recent thing that she's been in. But I thought she was very charming. I enjoyed her a lot. I think one of the great things about any of the British adaptations is they love to reuse actors, and I love it because you get to see, do they really have that range? Right. Can they portray, a villain? Can they portray a hero? Can they portray a minor character just as well as a major character? Like I thought it was really, really well done. Story-wise, I know we're not going to get too much into the plot, but I think casting was what stood out to me more so than the story. I had a hard time with that. But.
Anyone else?
I mean, Northanger Abbey is is just in the source material. it's a challenging tone. It's, you know, it's very, very challenging. And, you know, because you have, you know, Jane Austen trying to do like, this is my gothic novel, but is, haha, which, you know, which is challenging even to read, because you're like, what am I supposed to feel here? And then to adapt makes things awkward. So this is like my first time seeing an adaptation of Northanger Abbey. So there's a part of me that almost feels like I can't say whether it's good or bad or whatever. I'm like, this is interesting for an interesting novel. This is just all very curious, but I'm not very like, yeah, it's not even like I don't have any feelings for it. And I'm just like, there's so much going on here. I need more time with it, or maybe it's just a onion within an artichoke within a cucumber. I get it. Like,
that's a good analogy, honestly. Because when I watched it the first time on PBS, I was like, there's three different stories around here. I think I was like, okay, I'm just gonna leave it alone. It was, you know, people will talk about it, you know, whatever. But rewatching it for the panel, I'm like, oh, I get it now. I think the one thing that stuck with me though is the recreation aspect of all those gothic novel passages. Like, I think I like the way they wove those in, so you kind of hear Catherine's fanfic and see it. You know, like that aspect I think actually holds up for this version. I haven't seen the others, but I like how they wove that in. And since it's a miniseries format, you get a little bit more time with that whole thing in the creepy house and her family relationships, which I did appreciate. I appreciate that more now, knowing, you know, 10 years later, like knowing what I should be looking out for. Because I think that's sort of, as joy rewatching, it's like you watch something that you've seen before with, you know, knowing more, you just can get more out of it. And I'm not sure if Northanger is my favorite Austen story. It's a little confusing at times. I'm not really a gothic horror person, so I'm like, but I like how this version introduces folks to that if you haven't been introduced before, which is cool. Anyone else want to chip in on Northanger before we move on to the next question? Because we've talked about a lot in this past hour or so. Why do you believe these miniseries or made-for-TV movies are overlooked compared to the other adaptations? Or at least not discussed as often compared to other adaptations?
I think it's accessibility. I think that when they originally came out, and they came out on PBS, and so if you weren't necessarily a PBS person, you missed them. And then of course they came out on DVD. But if you didn't know they existed, of course you wouldn't have bought them unless you were like specifically looking for that. So I think the biggest thing is just accessibility. And I think now with all the streaming services, they are getting the opportunity to be seen. But I also think that, you know, part of the thing is we have this Hollywood imagery, and so, and the engine of Hollywood, that the only versions that people recognize, of course, are the ones that are on the big screen. I think also it has a little bit to do with, and so when they see the big screen ones, that's the ones that they know, and that's the only ones they know. And they may not have been Austen readers, so they maybe have never read the novel. So this is the epitome of what this novel was about. And so anything that ventures from it, they're like, well, I'm not interested. I think it also is just that, again, going back to what I was saying, this idea of not really being I guess I want to say like an Austen fan or period fan. So, you know, they're exposed to it on the big screen, but if you're not constantly looking for it or inundated with it, because that's just who you are as a person, then you miss out on these great versions of Jane Austen's novels, because you're only thinking it's got to be that Hollywood version.
I think there's also something to be said for like the somewhere between like marketing and cultural cachet. You know, if you say Pride and Prejudice, people immediately know what that is.
Right.
You know, or if they haven't seen it, they've seen a version of it. Like there's a touch point, there's touch point in reference. And Sense and Sensibility, I honestly think, has a similar cultural cachet, but only because in some ways it sounds like Pride and Prejudice. So someone's like, they're like, is that a sequel? It sounds like something. So it kind of, I feel like it kind of rides its coattails a bit. And not in a bad way, just
right.
And then Emma is interesting because again, I feel like cultural cachet, because you have, you know, at some point, if you've ever been into Clueless, you're like, wait, this is based on Jane. Right. Oh, maybe I should go back and figure this out. The other ones, Mansfield Park, Persuasion, Northanger Abbey, I just don't feel have like seeped into the cultural consciousness nearly as much.
Sure.
And so if PBS or anyone wanted to make a big deal out of it, they would actually have to push it, and they'd have to push the marketing, and they'd have to, like, you know, see why is this interesting, because those properties just can't ride on Jane Austen's coattails. It just can't. It needs to be pushed in many ways, I think, independently. And I'm thinking, you know, again, Shakespeare's my thing. Everyone knows Hamlet. Everyone knows, you know, Romeo and Juliet. But you say Love, Labor's Lost, people are like, what? You know, or Titus Andronicus, you know, even Mary Wise of Windsor. Like, you have to know, because in the catalog, those aren't the ones that have been, you know, pushed constantly. So I feel like that's, along with it just being on PBS, that's part of the reason why it gets lost, because people aren't pushing it on its own as this can be a thing you can enjoy. They're trying to get it to ride coattails, and it just can't ride them.
That is an interesting point, because I believe that part of the reason why I put up this panel is that so much of the discussion is either on the movies or on certain Austen properties and not others. Other thoughts on accessibility or why these are great intros to things?
Yeah. I definitely agree with what both of y'all said as well. I think accessibility, and then, just contextually, a lot of people just haven't heard of any other versions than the one they've seen. I think also length might be an issue, because let's be honest, unless, like, aside from us four and the we're a part of, most people don't go this hard for Jane.
Right.
True.
Yeah. And so I think when you're faced with, let's be honest, most people encounter it in school or something, you got to read it. You got to, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to watch the movie. And you look it up and you see one is a movie that's 90 minutes and another one is a miniseries that's, 3 hours, 20 minutes. What are you going to do? You're going to go for the one that is shorter. I've taught Jane Austen as a teacher when I used to teach. And I would pick the movie. It's just shorter. And that doesn't make it any less valued. I think, in some cases, a miniseries is a great way to, like, pick apart an adaptation, something like that. But I think it's very hard to get people who, like Latisha said, like, who don't already know.
With the streaming, with like binging culture, if you will, that like with the miniseries, there's, there are more people who are in the habit of binging than there were previously.
Right.
So, final thoughts before we say goodbye to everybody.
All of them.
Yes.
Not only to be a complete nerd, but also the differences are just beautiful. And I think kind of what we've been saying is you can see why some versions work for some people, why some versions work for some times, why some versions work for you in a different time of your life. We all have streaming at this point, or know someone who does. And absolutely watch anything. It's not like before, mail in the DVDs and oh god. Time we have Wi-Fi. Let's do it. Let's just watch them all.
Just be open to all the possibilities of Austen. Just be open to them all.
Jane left this really interesting legacy. for, I think, all of us to examine our lives and examine all these different stories. So enjoy it. And if someone enjoys it differently than you, then celebrate that too. That's
Thank you all for joining me on this adventure, and thank everybody at Virtual Jane Con for allowing us space to do this, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.